All right, welcome to the class. I am Teacher Jack, and this is a class on English spelling. Now, as many people may be aware, English spelling is famously terrible. Unlike with many other languages, there was never any standardization of English spelling. Hello there. Hello, Hide.
Hello, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I guess now that you're here, we'll get started. So like I was saying, this is going to be about English spelling, which is terrible, as you may have noticed.
Yeah.
The reason for this is actually because English, unlike most other languages, never had any kind of spelling reform. So our spelling basically was frozen around the time the dictionary was invented, and hasn't changed since. So it would be much more accurate if you were to go back in time several hundred years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But nowadays it is very inaccurate. So I figured we'd start off with a poem. Hide, are you familiar with all these words?
Which one? A tough one or a bow and call.
Yeah, that's a bow is how it's pronounced.
Yeah, bow. But I don't know bow. I know call or do.
Yeah, bough is the branch of a tree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the bough.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll read through this first part. It reads, I take it you already know of tough and bow and cough and dough.
Mm-hmm.
Others may stumble, but not you, on hiccup, thorough, slough, and through. Well done, and now you wish perhaps to learn of less familiar traps.
Mm-hmm.
So you can already tell that clearly all these words are pronounced very differently. And I've highlighted them in colors, so all the ones in yellow, those GHs are silent. So bow, dough, thorough, through, they end in a GH, but you don't pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the ones in red are all pronounced like S, tough, cough, slough. And finally, there's a very odd one, hiccup, with blue. Luckily for us, that word is now most commonly spelled with a P instead of that GH. It's now spelled H-I-C-C-U-P, but you still sometimes hear it spelled hiccup. It looks like hiccough, but it's pronounced hiccup.
Mm-hmm.
And also you may notice that even though all these words are spelled with an O-U, they all sound differently. So tough, bow, cough, dough. So very tricky. Now, Hide, would you like to try reading the first four lines of this one?
Okay. Beware.
And just so you know, anything that's in the same color means those words rhyme.
Okay. Beware of her dreadful word that looks like bird and sounds like bird, and that it's said like bed, not bed. For goodness sake, don't call it deed. Watch out for meat and great and threat. They rhyme with the suit and straight and that.
So that first word was sweet.
Sweet.
Yes.
Suit room, not suit.
Yeah, it looks like suit, but it's spelled almost the same as suit, but suit doesn't have an E at the end.
I see.
So with that E at the end, it becomes sweet.
Suite like suite room.
Yes, like a hotel suite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it rhymes with meat. So yeah, very good. So how about this one?
A moth is not a mouth in a mother, nor both in mother, birth, or brother. And here is not a match for there, nor there and fear for bear and peer. And then there's those and rules and rules Just look them up and goose and choose.
Yeah. So remember, it's a pear. Rhymes
Pear.
with bear.
Pear.
Yeah,
Bear.
not peer.
Pear.
Pear. Yeah. All right, and one last page, and this one's very tricky because none of these words actually sound alike, which is why none of them are colored. So if you want to try this one.
Okay. And the court and the work and the card and the word. And font and the front and the word and the sword. And do and go and the thwart and the cart. Come, I've hardly made a start. A dreadful language, man alive. I'd learned to speak it when I was 5, and yet to write it, the more I sigh. I'll not learn how till the day I die.
Very good. So that, is a little introduction to how weird English spelling can be. All these words, some look alike and sound completely different, and some look completely different and sound alike. So today I'm going to try to go through and see if we can't make some more sense of how these go. And particularly today I'm going to focus on vowels because those are the most...
Same spelling but different pronunciation sometimes I found. For example, read and read and read and read.
Yeah, read is the present tense, and then in the past tense it's read, but they're pronounced the same. Yeah, it's very, it's very tricky. And like I said, it actually is. It's funny because a lot of it is due to the fact that 300 to 400 years ago, that was much more accurate in how they were pronounced.
And the life and live. Sometimes I'm reading some books. Sometimes I mistake the pronouns, live or live.
Yeah, live or live. Yes, that's another difficult one because they're pronounced the same. There's also words sometimes where stress changes. So, for instance, I can contract an illness, but I write a contract. They're they both are written the same and technically sound the same, but one is contract, the other is contract.
Yeah.
And those are two completely different words. So yeah, it can be very, very tricky. So, and like I said, the reason is several parts. One is that things haven't changed. We haven't updated our spelling for several hundred years. And the other thing is that English has a lot of loan words we borrowed from Norwegian, words we borrowed from Greek, words we borrowed from French, from Arabic, and all these languages have different writing systems, and we borrowed their writing systems when we borrowed their words. So that's why when you saw sweet, why it sounds like meat, because sweet is a French word, and in French spelling, that makes sense. But then meat is from Germanic, is from an English word, so they have two different systems of using vowels. So with that in mind, we're going to move on here. So to talk about these, I'm going to go through the symbols for the English vowels, just so if you see these symbols, you won't be terribly confused. So these are the vowels you find in American English, and the symbol I will use to denote them. So this one is E. You find it in beat, field, deed. You can see several ways of writing this vowel. This is I, as in mit, it, myth, and hinge. This vowel is almost always written with a single I. Sometimes it's written with a Y, as in myth. Then we have oo, as in root, flute, and shoe. This vowel is always written with either an O or a U in some combination with other vowels. You rarely find it written with anything other than an O or a U. This is as in would, put, could. It's a very tricky vowel sometimes for people. It's basically the same relation from E to I is oo to One is tense, the other is relaxed. So would, put, could.
Is it a schwa sound? No.
It is not like the schwa, but it is you can kind of think of it as if you take a oo and then you mix it with that schwa, you get a But yeah, it's not like the schwa. The schwa is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's more in the middle of your mouth, and it's very, in English especially, it's a very small vowel. Uh. It's kind of if you schwa is if you put your mouth in a neutral position, just whereas if you were resting, if you weren't speaking, and then you just kind of make a that's a schwa. Whereas is further back in the mouth, and your lips are still rounded for this one. It's like
I
ooh,
I many
but
times take some reading class and the teacher chat.
mhm.
I read could or would and put. Always the teacher corrected me, but I couldn't understand.
What was he? Oh, he was correcting you on this vowel.
Yeah, I could go to some place, for example. Then I could. The teacher said, "You are saying could no. Open the mouth a little and tongue your tongue down like that." I couldn't understand.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it can be very tricky. Like I said, the real key to this vowel, and everyone, all the teachers will have their different ways of trying to get your mouth in the right position for it. But the thing to remember is that it's related to oo. So you see how there's e and I, and then oo and
Mm-hmm.
they're related to each other. They're actually two pairs. In English, it's the long e and the short and the long I and short I and long u and short u is what they're sometimes called. Even though they're the same length, that's what they're called. In Old English, they used to be different lengths, but nowadays they just sound different.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is one is very tense. The e, oo, when you say those, you can kind of feel how your mouth is engaged, your tongue, your throat, your lips, they're all tensed up, they're working. With I and u, they're very lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of these sounds that oftentimes people refer to English as kind of sounding almost like it's mumbled. So you can kind of, if you kind of mumble your voices, and then you'll get this when you try to go e and oo.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so there's a very tricky sound. Like I say, oftentimes when you say it, say the word in your head, and you can even say it wooed with that long U, and then wooed, and then try to just weaken it. Just wooed, wooed,
Good.
wood.
Good. Good.
hmm Yeah, and always remember it's good to kind of drop your mouth, relax everything. If you're having a really hard time, I always recommend take a few deep breaths, relax everything, like try to feel all your muscles relaxing, even the ones not in your mouth, your shoulders, everything. Lie back in your chair, and then when you kind of feel like everything is completely relaxed, you kind of go, You try to make a ooh, but without actually using any muscles. Uh, uh. So that would be my recommendation for practicing this sound. And if you ever need a guide, by the way, to hear how it sounds like, I highly recommend, actually, if you go to Wikipedia and if you look under English vowels, you'll find this symbol. If you click it, it'll bring you to the page about this sound. And
Mm-hmm.
on that page, there will be a little audio file. You can click it, and it'll just be a man going, so you can listen to him. And you can do this for any of these vowels on Wikipedia. It's a good resource for being able to hear the vowels.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. It's also nice because Wikipedia will also link you to examples of this vowel in other languages. So if you happen to speak any of those other languages, or if it turns out this vowel shows up in Japanese somewhere but hidden, like it's like secretly, it'll tell you where, and you can kind of use that to help yourself.
Japanese, we have only five vowels. I will. Very
Oh
simple.
yeah. No, yeah, it is. When I say it might be hidden in Japanese, what I mean is that there are some sounds in languages. We call these allophones, is the scientific term. And what it means is that while in a language there's only these sounds, sometimes those sounds mutate. An example of this would kind of be like you were in the class last time and we were doing the tongue twisters, and I
Mm-hmm.
was telling you how there's that, in words like Betty Botter, there's that little
Yeah.
D sound. And that D sound is not a sound that shows up in English on its own. You find it in Spanish and Italian on its own, but in English it only exists as a mutation of T and D.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I kind of mean. So some languages sometimes have these little other versions. of a sound. Like in French, sometimes there are is and sometimes it's ha. And the
Mm-hmm.
French don't notice this difference, but if you listen for it, it is there. They think it's the same sound, but when you do a language science, you learn these weird things. So sometimes it turns out that your language has sounds you didn't know were in it. You didn't know you were making that sound, but you were. It's kind of the fun of phonetics. But anyway, here we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
So this sound with a lowercase a is ah, like in proper, heart, watch.
So, watch.
So ah, it's all the way in the back of your mouth and low down. It's that, ah, it's what
Ah,
doctors make you say so that your tongue lowers and your throat opens so they can see.
ah, ah, proper.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the very distinctive English vowel. It's called an ash, is what that symbol is. And it's in the word ash, in fact. Cat, have, transfer.
Cat have transfer.
Yeah. And the key to this sound is it's like ah, but how ah is in the back of your mouth, but ah is in the front of your mouth. So
Mm-hmm.
it's your jaw is still dropped low, your tongue is still low, but you say it in the front of your mouth instead of the back. So you kind of almost throw the sound forward.
But British sound different. Like cat have
Yeah,
transfer.
the British will sound a little more like a cut or a ha or no. The British tend to use the ah vowel more often, while in American English we use that ah vowel more often.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's one of the most distinctive things in American English is our use of ah. But you find this in British English as well. Let's see. Then this is like in red, ordinary, leopard.
Real part.
This is I'm gonna in this one I'll try to use this vowel very distinctively because I actually have a Southern American accent, and if you're from the South, this vowel tends to become an I vowel sometimes. So I'll be trying to make sure I say it to give you a good example of standard American instead of my Southern accent.
Mm-hmm.
But just so you know, if you ever hear me saying it like that. And here's that schwa I was talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
examples, this is the A in woman, the
Mm-hmm.
I in pencil, and the
Pencil.
O in author.
Also.
And you can almost feel how in those it almost just seems like I'm just going woman, pencil, author.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that little vowel sound kind of in there. So woman, pencil, author.
Also.
And this sound is never stressed in English. And in fact, as you'll find, just about the majority of time, if a vowel is unstressed, it becomes a schwa. So it's actually a good thing that if you know a syllable is not stressed, that you can kind of guess that it'll just be this schwa. Now this vowel, it's written with a kind of backward C. In American English, it really only appears before R's. In British English, it appears in more places, but in American English, it's pretty much only before R's. So for,
Four.
war,
Four.
and in
Four.
fact, as we'll see, a lot of A type vowels, O type vowels, and U type vowels all become this vowel before an R. Or,
Four. Four.
yeah. So this upside down V, this is nut, come, butter.
Come. Butter.
And yeah, and this sound is actually similar to that or sound. The big difference is you don't round your lips when you say this one. So it's o, are the difference between those two. You just unround your lips. So now we have some double vowels in English. The fancy name for this is a diphthong. Diphthongs are when two vowels kind of share the same spot. They're so close to each other they kind of fuse together. So they're treated like one vowel, even though they're technically two. So this one is plus e, so you get a. So this is a, as in rain, hate, or cafe.
Rain. Hate cafe.
Yeah. And if you're ever having trouble with any of these double vowels, all of them involve they kind of get stricter at the end. So if you're ever having a hard time pronouncing them, just say it all like eh, and then close your jaw as you say it. Eh. You can just close up your mouth, and it works for all these double vowels in English. So this one is I, as in height, kind, or sky.
Height, kind, sky.
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 Yeah. Then we have a related one, ow. This is in cow, out, or bow.
Out, bow.
Yeah. This is oi. It's the sound you see in coin, boy, and asteroid.
Coin, boy, asteroid. Asteroid.
Yeah. And this sound, luckily, is pretty much only ever written with an OI or an OY. So this sound is actually very easy to know when you're supposed to say it. Then we have O, and this is that O sound in boat, gross, or toe.
Boat, gross, toe.
Oops, and that's all of the vowels. So things that are most commonly going to affect, we've talked about this. One is if they're how they're stressed. So like I said, unstressed vowels usually become that schwa. So you have chord when it's that full vowel, that O sound, ord. Then we have record. When it becomes unstressed, it just turns into a schwa. Record, chord, record.
Record.
The other is this thing called R coloring. And it means that vowels tend to change their sound when they're followed by an R. Like I said, a lot of them will change to or, but even if they don't change to or, they'll probably change to something else. So you see the A in family is a, and then the A in farm is a ah. Family, farm.
Family, farm.
Yeah. So R's affect vowels. This is a very common thing in English. The other, and this is a thing you'll find in writing, is the silent E. So sometimes you'll see words and they'll have an E at the end that isn't pronounced. And this makes the nearest vowel, the one right before it, say their name. And when I say their name, I mean, so if it's an A, you'll pronounce it A. An E will be E. An I will be I. An O will be O. And U will be U. And that little J right there, when we're talking about phonetics, makes the Y sound, so U. So, like I said, you'll see this written at the ends of words, normally with a consonant between it. So we have some examples down there. And you can see a cub, so where the U is going but then we add that silent E, and it becomes a U, so cube. Then kit, it's at it. Then we add an E, and it becomes kite. And hat is a, but then with the silent E, it becomes a, so hate.
Hate. Hat.
So, yeah, so this is always a guide. It's kind of the difference between suit and sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is when it's suit, there's no E, and that U and that I are making an oo sound for some reason. But then you add that E, and that kind of activates the I, the U, so it's su and then eat. So it's a little weird sometimes, but it's fairly regular. Unfortunately, we'll see some examples later on where those silent E's are not helping us. But like I said, these are a general guideline to things to look out for. It's where the stress is, where the R's are, and are there any silent E's. So always remember, there are always exceptions in English because our spelling is bad. So I'll move on to some examples. So a single A. Normally this is either pronounced like an A or an A sound. So you find the A in words like hatchet, cat, and A is an ache or nation. There's no definite rule on when you'll find one or the other. You tend to find A more frequently in shorter words or words with just one consonant afterwards, like in cat, whereas A is more common in longer words or words with extra consonants after it, so like in nation. of course, we can see there's like already exceptions to this rule in ache and hatchet.
Ache, we
Hmm.
connect from head and headache, then the pronunciation change, right?
No, it's still ache. So if you say
Oh,
headache, it's always ache. Or stomach ache, it's
yeah.
still an ache. Still that
Oh,
A sound.
I always pronounce headache, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it's not a headache. It's headache.
Headache. Okay.
Hmm. And the interesting thing is that A will only ever be spelled with one A. So if you ever see any other A plus any other vowels, you know that it can't be pronounced because a is only ever written with one A.
Hmm.
So yeah. So you can see there in ache, that's a silent E, which is why it's ache and not ack. So then it's other common sounds if you put it before an R, it becomes either an ah, as in barred or tar, or an eh, as in various, care, or any word that ends in airy.
Hmm.
Now that's also a silent E there in care. So you can kind of notice that how there's two vowels here and there were two vowels up here. So you can kind of think that if it wasn't going to be an ah sound, then with the R it becomes ah. But if it was going to be an A sound with the R, it becomes E. So you can kind of think of it as, you can kind of think of that. If you can see that silent E, but there's also an R, it's trying to be A, but that R is mutating it in English, so it becomes eh instead of A. And if it's unstressed or at the end of the word, it's pronounced like a schwa. So in the word about, that A is a schwa, about. And then we have banana has actually two schwas in it. The first A, b, and the last one, n, banana.
Banana. Banana.
Yeah. You want to make sure that you can still hear that little schwa at the end, but it is very small. Banana. It's not banan, but banana.
Banana.
Now, if it's after a W sound, it's normally an ah, unless it's followed by a k, a g, or a ng. So that's why we get words like want and watch, but not wag.
Mm.
Um, this seems like a weird rule. The reason is because that W, because your lips are rounded and everything, is kind of affecting the A. So it makes it into this ah sound that's back there, where you'd make the oo sound. But if it's followed by a k, a g, or a ng, and you can kind of feel where in your mouth those sounds are made in the back of in the ng, that where your tongue hits the roof of your mouth. So kind of this cancels it out. So the W affects the vowel unless this KG or NG are canceling out the W. Then it's just a regular sound. And if it's between a W and an R, it becomes that OR sound. So that's why we get war and quarry. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that one was a little complicated. So, and like I said, there's always some exceptions. So I've included some of the most notable ones, the most common words you'll see that don't follow this rule at all. One is father, where it's that ah sound, father. And the other is R,
Mm.
where it's also that ah sound, even though it's coming before an R. R. So then we have AI or AY. And I write it like this because that I and that Y are interchangeable in words. So AI and AY are the same thing in English. But sometimes they're written one way, sometimes they're written another. Like I said, it depends on basically how it was spelled some hundreds of years ago. Most commonly, this is going to just be pronounced A, as in bait or day. A. And it's kind of nice because it almost mirrors what the phonetic sound looks like. It has that little E with a little I after it, but it's spelled A with an I or a Y after it. A. Now before R, becomes as in berry or millionaire,
Mm.
and it's unstressed and it's a schwa when unstressed. Now, one thing you'll notice is that this is pretty much the same thing as we found with a up there. So you can kind of see how we have up here we have it's a, and before an r it becomes and then it's unstressed as in schwa. And here we have a, before an r it's and then a schwa when unstressed. So you can always kind of think in English the rules that a sounds become sounds before r's.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like in mountain, Britain, and
my
whoop.
American friend, he doesn't pronounce T. Mountain.
Yeah, so actually, and this is a thing. So whenever you have a T or a D for that matter, right before an N or an M in English, you actually make this little sound. It's called a glottal stop. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before,
Mm-hmm.
but it basically means that the T goes away, but it doesn't completely go away. Your throat still clenches up. So instead of mountain, it's mountain. And instead of Britain, it's Britain.
Mm-hmm.
So you can hear there's still that my throat chokes up and I still stop the sound right there, but I don't actually make a T. So yeah, in these words it's actually mountain, Britain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very difficult. Tough.
Yeah. And if you ever hear the word in English, uh-oh, there's a little glottal stop before the and the o. And you can almost hear it if you listen. It's uh-oh. It's not uh-oh. It's uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
And that sound, when they say glottal stop, glottal just means it's way in the bottom of your throat where you make your H sound, huh. You can kind of feel it down there. And a stop means it's the kind of sound that a T or a K or a P is, where you stop the air completely. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of clench up the bottom of your throat, almost like you're going to swallow. It's just, and that's a glottal stop. But yeah, so that T goes away. And actually, we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, so for now, AI is pronounced A before R's, and then unstressed becomes a schwa. And the most notable exceptions for this one are the word said, where it's an sound, but even though there's no R, and then again, where it's also an sound, or if you're in the southern parts of America, it's again with an sound.
Mm-hmm.
So we have AU and AW, which once again that U and that W are interchangeable, kind of like the I and the Y. This is almost always going to be pronounced ah, like taught, lawn, or author. So normally ah. And yeah, so that one is actually very convenient. It's almost always just that. If you see an A and a U or an A and a W, just ah. That's how it sounds. Taught, lawn, author. It rarely is anything else. So now E. E is most commonly either pronounced E or eh. So like she, meter, or as in better and get.
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes becomes a schwa right before an R if it's a root with one syllable. And when I say root, I mean because most of these words can be made longer by adding suffixes or prefixes to them. But if the root word is one syllable, like in clerk or her, it's a schwa. So you can hear it's clerk, her. But then you have, if it's multiple syllables, like very or serious, then it stays a sound or an E sound.
Prefix EX is very difficult for me.
Which one?
EX, E and X prefix. Example or experience or Sometimes
Oh, the the
E.
the the the, the second sound, the one in better.
Mm.
Okay. So yeah, sound can be difficult sometimes. So you know that the a sound,
Yeah.
the like
Ex-
the like
Exit.
the what?
Exit. Exit. We need to
Yeah,
pronounce E.
exit.
And
Yeah,
e- experience, maybe A.
it's experience.
Mm.
So there's the sound that e makes in Japanese, the seconds in the second syllable of your name, Hide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's if you start with that sound and then you kind of lit it and you can kind of feel your tongue. If you let your tongue drop a little bit, it goes
Mm. Yeah.
eh.
Yeah.
It's there. It's lower than the E of Japanese, but it's
Mm.
still higher than ah. It's not that far down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's eh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, so in words like eggs, so there's words like exit or exit.
Exit. Example.
Yeah, example. So yeah. So yeah, in fact, yeah, example is an example of eh.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's how it is. It's like the a you find in Japanese or in Spanish, but it's lower. It's lower down in your mouth. Not so low as ah, but definitely lower than the e you're used to. Now this word is never pronounced if you find it at the end of a word. It's always silent down there, like in starve or discipline. They're pronounced with e's. There is an exception in words that are French or Greek. So, for instance, recipe, you say that E. Cafe, you say that E. Those are French words. Or then if you're talking about, like, Persephone is a Greek goddess, the goddess of spring.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Persephone. And those you pronounce the E's at the end. But rarely, if it's an English word, a native English word, it'll just be a silent E. And the partially the reason for this is that those E used to be pronounced, like I said, hundreds of years ago, but they were always unstressed, and so they became schwas. And because those schwas are such small sounds, eventually they just went away altogether. So you could kind of imagine that the word starve a long time ago sounded more like starva, but then the starva, that just goes away at the end. So
Mm-hmm.
disciplina just goes away at the end. Now it's always pronounced E. It always says its name if it's before another vowel that is pronounced separately. So in the words like create, you see that is E and A next to each other, but they're not pronounced. They're not sharing the sound. It's E A, then it's create or
Right.
area, hideous.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it always says its name if it's actually a distinct vowel before another vowel. And it's a schwa when unstressed, like in taken or poet. And in fact, you can see in poet that even though it's next to another vowel, because it's not in front of that vowel, it's the schwa. If it was in front of that, if it was P-E-O-T, it would be like peote. But it's not, so it's poet.
Put.
Yeah, poet.
Put. Put.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to make sure that poet is two syllables.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, sometimes non-native speakers will poet or poet, but it is poet.
Yeah. Sometimes American pronounce poem.
Yeah, yeah. Poem yeah. That's a very regional one. If you're from the South, where I'm from, and I don't say it this way, but I
Mm-hmm.
actually have definitely known people who say poem or poem or just the one syllable poem. But yeah, in standard English, it's poem. It's like poet, but with a M instead of a T at the end. Oops. And yeah, and in fact, you can see up there at the top that those second E's are unstressed, so they're schwas. Meter, better. Now, EA, not to be mistaken for the EA of create or area, where they're two separate sounds, but sometimes EA together make one sound. And just like single E, this actually makes the same sounds, either E or eh. So E as in eat or please. You see there's a silent E, please. Or eh as in bread or health. And it's most commonly it becomes either a schwa or an E before an R. So you get earth and learn, where it's a schwa, or you get beard and year, where it's an E. And less commonly, but still enough that I felt I needed to mention it, you find it as an eh. So bear, swear.
Yeah.
So yeah, so EA has a lot of possibilities. Some notable exceptions are the words heart, where it's an ah sound, heart, and great, where it's an A sound. And these are just exceptions. There's not really any other words that are spelled EA and sound like these, but they're very common words. So heart and great are exceptions. Double E. This is a nice, easy one. It's always pronounced E. If you see two E's next to each other, it's E. It's the easiest compound in English. So we have a few remaining E compounds. So EI or Y will normally be pronounced A as in veil or obey, or E as in key or seize. And you'll see, not as frequently, but still occasionally, you'll see height or I with that I sound. So this one has 3 options, but the are very common. It is always an E if it's following the letter C. So deceive, sealing, these are always E. C, E, I. Oh, there's a C, I, E. Oops, misspelled. But yeah, if you ever see this E, I after a C, it's always C. C, E, I is C. And it's always an eh before an R. So there, hair, air. That word is air. It has an H, but you don't pronounce it. And it's an I when unstressed, or not at the beginning, at the end. Sorry, it is an I when it's unstressed and also not at the end of the word. So unlike a lot of the other ones, which when they unstress they become schwas, when this one is unstressed it becomes an I. So foreign, counterfeit, I.
Counterfeit, yes.
But if it is unstressed and at the end of the word, it actually remains an E sound. So monkey, or the state of New Jersey.
New Jersey, monkey.
And there's one big exception to this, is the word weird. Weird. It's before an R, but it's E still instead of eh. So with our rules, we'd think it would be weird, but instead it's weird. EO. EO is very rare. I only bring it up because it occurs in the common word people. It also shows up in leopard. And in people, it's pronounced like E. In leopard, it's pronounced like eh. So people, leopard. Like I say, luckily, you don't really see EO anywhere else in English.
I thought it's leopard.
Yeah, no, it's leopard. And it was leopard. We get this from, that Leo comes from the Latin Leo, which means lion. But this word has been in English for a long time, so that Leo has it's changed to le over the years. So yeah, so it looks like leopard, but it's actually leopard. Leopard.
Leopard.
hmm So now we have EU or EW. And this one, sometimes it has an I in front of it, so sometimes it's IEU, but sometimes you don't see that I, which is why it's EU or W, but sometimes there's also a Y. It's most commonly pronounced U. So view or ewe, which is a female sheep, a ewe.
You. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, remember that J is a Y sound, ewe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just oo if it's after an R, a Y, a sh, a ch, or a j sound, or any consonant plus L. So jewel or blue, you get that oo. This seems like a very weird thing. There is actually some logic to this. What it is that all the sound, except for the R, the y, the sh, the ch, and the j sound, they're all made in the same part of the mouth. In phonetics, we call that part palatal. It's on the roof of your mouth. It's the same place the y sound is made, and because they're already there, you don't ever hear that y, so it just becomes oo. Instead of you, it's oo if your tongue is already there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's there. And R and L are technically a little further in your mouth, but they're similar enough that this rule also applies. Oops. And yeah, that's all for those.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make sense, by the way? Why
Yeah.
all those sounds? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I. I is most commonly pronounced like I, as in silent, kind, or wind, or it, as in give, minute, or wind.
Yeah,
Now,
wine and wind is a little
yeah.
different.
Now you might notice that those are spelled the exact same. But the first one is wind, and it means to twist, as in I can wind up a clock.
Mm-hmm.
And the other word is wind, as in the wind is blowing. The air is the wind. So yeah, that's an example of I doing both those sounds. So yeah, one is wind, one is wind. And you just have to learn the difference from context. You would never wind a clock, and the wind would never blow. So it's wind if you're twisting something, wind if it's the air. So this becomes a schwa before an R that is at the end of the word or followed by another consonant. So bird and stirrer are examples of this.
Stir.
Yeah. Yeah, so stirrer can be very difficult because it's schwa R, schwa R. Stirrer.
Stir.
Yes. And it's always E, just like the letter E. The letter I is also pronounced E if it's before another vowel that is pronounced separately. So idiot and alien. Both those vowels, the O in idiot and the E in alien, are both pronounced like schwas because they're unstressed. But those I's are pronounced E because they're before another vowel. So idiot, alien.
Idiot, alien.
Mm-hmm. And remember, it's idiot, alien, not idiot, alien, because they're schwas. They're spelled differently, but they're both schwas.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's like all our other vowels, it's a schwa when unstressed. We see this in pencil or typical.
Pencil, typical.
Mm-hmm. There are some exceptions to this. One is machine, where it's an E. The other is business, where it's not pronounced at all. It's just silent. Business.
Business.
Yeah, not business. Business.
Business. Business.
Business.
Business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the S and the N are right next to each other. It's written with an I, but the I makes no sound. So business, not business.
Business. Business.
hmm Just like in if you have words like a snorkel or
Mm,
snake, but business.
business. Business.
Now, IE is almost always E.
Mm-hmm.
There's one big exception to this, and that's the word friend, which has an IE, but it's pronounced eh, friend. So that's all for E. So now we're on O.
Oh, it's always confusing. Many
Yeah.
cases we need to pronounce it like ah.
Oh yeah. So O, as we will see, is one of the most annoying ones. So O can be ah, as in dot, or the first O in doctor. It can
Mm,
also be O, as in gross or go. It can also be as in monkey or come. And it can also be oo, as in to or lose.
good.
So we can see O has a lot of options. Look at those silent E's there. They're not helping at all. We would expect those words to be comb or lows, but they're not. They're come and lose. So you're right. O is kind of the worst.
Yeah, reading lesson, I always corrected. Oh,
hmm
for example, before I read doctor, but teacher said doctor.
Yeah, it's doctor, not doctor. So one nice thing is that O is always an or if there's that R there. It's always that or sound. So for, boring, gore, always.
Mhm.
And it's a schwa if it comes between a W and an R. So word, work, any word like that, it'll just be a schwa. And it also becomes a schwa if it's not stressed. So author, eloquent. Yeah, you can also see the second O in doctor. That's an unstressed O. So Some exceptions. There's wolf, where it's that hard sound we were talking about at the beginning. Wolf, like in
Wolf,
would or could, wolf.
wolf. Mm,
Then, and this is a particularly pesky one because woman and women, the MAN and the MEN are both pronounced min in
mm,
these words, but in the first one it's w, and
wolf,
second one it's wi.
women,
So woman,
women,
women.
women, women.
In the first one it's that relaxed u sound, and the second one it's that relaxed e sound. So and I, woman, women.
Woman, women, woman, woman, women.
Yeah. So yeah, O sadly is very annoying on its own, but it is luckily very regular before R's and when unstressed. Now OA is most commonly going to be O, boat, loading, O.
No,
And just like a single O, it becomes O before an R. So bore, course.
of course.
OE. It's an E sound if it's a Greek word. So I included some here. You probably may not know them, but a phoenix is a Greek bird, a fire bird.
Mm-hmm.
And
Phoenix.
in amoeba is a Greek word. It's a type of cell, is an amoeba. But in English words, in non-Greek words, it's pronounced O or oo when at the end of a word, which is where it most commonly appears. Toe, doe,
Mm,
or canoe, shoe.
shoe, shoe.
One notable exception is does, as
That.
in he does.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for this is because you can kind of think that this isn't really OE. This is do plus an ES. So when it's does, does. So then we have OI or Y. Like I said earlier, this is almost always going to be oi, as in boy or coin.
Coin.
There's one exception to this, and that is in French words, which will have an OIR in them, and then it's wa. So this gives us word like reservoir, which is a place where we store water, is a reservoir, or noir, which means
Wow.
black, and is also a type of book, is a noir. Detective books are noir.
Wow.
And like I said, these sound like that because they're French words, and in French, this is how they're spelled and pronounced.
Noir.
Yeah, in French it'd be noir. So double O. This is almost as regular as double E, but not quite. It still has a few alterations. So most commonly, it'll be either the tense oo, as in hoop, or food, or it'll be the relaxed oo, as in wood and foot.
Foot. Foot. Foot.
Wood, foot. Remember, yeah, always try to relax when you're making this one. Wood, foot.
Foot.
It can almost help to try to kind of make yourself sound a bit like a bit like a hick or a southerner. Wood, foot. Kind of really exaggerate it.
Mm.
Like a lot of these O sounds, it becomes that or sound when there's an R. So pour or door. But there are some notable exceptions: are blood and flood, both of which it's an sound. Blood, fud, flood.
Flood.
OU or W, when stressed, just like single O, this one has a lot of options. So when stressed, you'll hear it ow, as in cow, or out,
Out.
ooh,
Out.
as in through, or you, and as in touch or country.
Country.
It can also be O, as in no or dough.
Dough.
So this one is very tricky, and unfortunately I have no real guide for this one. You just have to guess. Luckily, before an R, this always becomes a schwa. So in the words like courage or journey, it's a schwa. It will also always be a straw if it's unstressed and spelled OU. So for instance, nervous. And I mentioned the spelling because this is the one case where OU and OW are distinctive. Because if it's unstressed and still spelled OU, it'll be a schwa. But if it's unstressed and spelled with a W, it's O, like in yellow or rainbow. And then, because it can't let us be happy, this combination is just difficult. It has all these exceptions. This is hour. Both of those words are pronounced the same. Cough, that we've seen before. Pour. And then acknowledge.
Acknowledge.
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
So knowledge is spelled with a W, but that OW is pronounced ah. So it's knowledge.
Knowledge. Oh.
Yeah, there you go. Knowledge. Yeah, there's a W written, but there's no actual W sound. And yeah, and you can note that almost all of these O sounds become that O before an R. So if you see an O combination and there's an R, or is your best guess. So we have U. We're almost done here. U is most commonly as in butter or dump. Oo, as in rule or flew.
Ooh.
Or U, as in mute and January. Or that soft and put and sugar.
Sure.
And once again, the big difference between oo and U is you tend to get U if it's not before a palatal sound, but oo if it is. So because of that R and that L right there, also if it was a sh or a ch or a j, it would be oo, whereas in front of other words like M and N, it becomes U, like mute and January. And there we have it. So those are all the vowels, and it's 8:59, so I'm going to have to get going soon for the next class. But do you have any questions?
No questions, but I recognize I pronounce a lot of mistakes.
That's all right. You always have to practice. A really good resource actually for hearing these words if you want to practice them is if you go to the Wiktionary. I'll write it there, and you look up words. It'll have them written phonetically, and it'll also a lot of them come with a little sound bite for it.
Mhm.
Also, on the page for this class, I included a little link to download the PowerPoint in case you wanted it for reference. So I hope that was at all helpful. I hope at least you saw some words and got corrected on them.
Mhm.
And I'll have to go now. But thanks for attending.
Thank you very much. Mhm. See you.